Hello, BookTube. Welcome back to my 2025 library tour. In this episode, day 6 of Science Fiction and Fantasy Week. Let's get started. So the first 4 books are by Jin Yong, who we saw yesterday. Let me grab them. The 4 books are part of the Legend of the Condor Heroes novel, starting with A Hero Born, A Bond Undone, A Snake Lies Waiting, and A Heart Divided. So the Legend of the Condor Hero series is the first novel in a trilogy. Jin Yong's magnum opus. So Jin Yong was a Chinese author. He wrote in the wuxia genre, or martial arts fantasy. Many of his novels are historical fiction set in dynastic China. The Legend of the Condor Hero series and its sequels are set during the rise of the Mongol Empire and the I think the third one takes place either in the Yuan dynasty or shortly afterwards in the Ming dynasty. So the Legend of the Condor Heroes is set in the late 12th and early 13th centuries, during the very beginnings of the Mongol conquests. It's about 2 martial heroes whose fathers were blood brothers, the best of friends. They meet a warrior Taoist monk who has assassinated a spy in the southern Song dynasty who's working for the northern Jin dynasty. And this monk basically decrees, once he learns that each hero's wife is pregnant, that if the children are of the same gender, whether male or female, they will be martial siblings. If they are of the opposite gender, well, they'll be betrothed. Unfortunately, things don't go to plan, and the village is attacked. The main protagonist's mother, eventually flees into Mongolia and is taken in by Genghis Khan, who is quite impressed by her son. And Genghis Khan sort of adopts the hero as sort of a surrogate son, and he certainly befriends many of Genghis Khan's younger children. The other wife is kidnapped by a Jin prince and marries him, and this prince adopts the other boy as his son, and these two form a sometimes allied, mostly antagonistic relationship that goes throughout the whole novel. Also included are a number of martial greats, love stories, betrayals, that sort of thing. It's been a long while since I read the series or the novel, and I don't think I like it that much. It doesn't really work for me. I'm probably still going to keep it, though, at least for a little while longer. But I think this Legend of the Condor Heroes is, I think, definitely on the pile for whether or not I want to keep. The next 2 books are by Chen Liu. It's the first and second books in the Dandelion Dynasty series, starting with The Grace of Kings and continuing with The Wall of Storms. So The Grace of Kings is basically a retelling of the rise of the Han Dynasty and the collapse of the Qin Dynasty in a silk punk, or basically a steampunk version of ancient China, which Ken Liu calls silk punk. When I read the novel, I could not help but think I really would just prefer having a history of these two Chinese dynasties. I really would just prefer reading the history than reading this fictionalized account, because I don't particularly like anybody in the novel. The only saving grace is that so in the setting there are a number of countries, and each country has a patron god, and these gods are basically what makes the novel. I mean, it's like the saving grace of this novel is the gods' commentary. And I have bailed on The Wall of Storms. The next three books are by Jen Lyons. They are the first three books in the Chorus of Dragons series. The Ruin of Kings, The Name of All Things, which I think is the second book, and the third book is The Memory of Souls, of which I have not read either of the sequels. I have read The Ruin of Kings. It's a novel with two timelines, with the same main character. It's basically about a year apart. And there is a conspiracy that's going to overthrow the king of this country. And the main character is integral in stopping it. But he gets into a lot of trouble getting to that point. And I think while there are some really interesting bits with the novel, I didn't like it that much, or at all. Next up is The Kingdom of Liars by Nick Martell. I think it's the first book in a duology or a trilogy. It's about a young man trying to restore his family's honor after they have been accused, whether rightly or wrongly, of regicide, for which, even though he did not commit the deed, he is being held responsible. Read the first chapter, did not like it. The next two books are by Alex R. Kaler, the first two books in the Runebinder Chronicles. Runebinder and Runebreaker. So this is a post-apocalyptic fantasy in which some humans have gained magical powers, and there's an invasion of demons that, I guess, brought about the end of the world. Runebinder is about a young man who begins to form an attachment to... he's part of this magical order, and he begins to develop a relationship with one of his older boy, older young man in this organization, as well as drawing the attention of a demon. Eventually, the young man, I think, chooses the human of the grouping. Meanwhile, the demon, I guess, eventually decides to try his luck with somebody else in the sequel. Did not particularly care for this one. Never got around to this one. So they're both going bye-bye. The next three books are by Guy Gabriel Kay. The Lines of Al-Rassan. I think this has something to do with the Reconquista fantasy version. Guy Gabriel Kay's basic shtick as a fantasy author is he takes history and fantasizes it. Basically transforms it into a fantasy. So this is set during the Reconquista or during the sort of Muslim dominance of the Iberian Peninsula. A Song for Arbonne is about the Albigensian Crusade, which is the sort of extermination of the Cathars in what is now southern France. And Tigana is about Renaissance Italy and warring magicians. I've tried Tigana, didn't like it. I tried A Song for Arbonne, and it petered out. So I think both of those, all three of those, are likely going bye-bye. Next is a return to Robert E. Howard, The Black Stranger and Other American Tales. So this is a collection of, I think mostly horror stories by Robert E. Howard, although there are some, I haven't really looked too deeply into it. I probably should. Although there is at least one Conan story in here. Because one of the Conan stories is basically set in colonial America, just transferred to the Hyborian Age. I don't know what to do with that one. Next up is The Fire Stone by Tanya Huff. Not entirely sure why I picked this up. Not sure why it stayed in my library for as long as it has. But its time is done. So the next batch of books are part of the Dune series by Frank Herbert. Dune. I also have Dune Messiah. Children of Dune. And God Emperor of Dune. So Dune probably does not need much of an introduction. I mean, it's one of the great science fiction novels that spawned possibly, for the most part, a letdown series. I mean, Dune is great. The rest of the books in the series are probably disappointing compared to the first book. Maybe not God Emperor. So I have very mixed feelings about Dune. I read it about 20 years ago and quite liked it at the time, even though there are a lot of things about the book that bugs me. And every time I've reread it, that nagging, whatever it is about the book that bugs me, gets more and more intense. So I'm not entirely sure what to do with Dune. I'm thinking I'll probably keep it. I think I would prefer better editions, but that's neither here nor there. Next up is The Time of the Dark by Barbara Hambly. I think this is a portal fantasy about a wizard that comes to our world. I picked it up from Selnook at the West Waco Library and Genealogy Center. So for those of you who don't know, the West Waco Genealogy, the West Waco Library and Genealogy Center has in its lobby a little nook where discarded library books or DXS library books and lesser quality paper donated books to the Waco McLennan County Friends at the Library are placed for 50 cents. If you're interested in magazines, I think they are 25 cents, or at least they were the last time I was there, and that's been a while. And National Geographic was like 10 cents. And I think that's where I picked this up many years ago and have never gotten around to it. I probably will never get around to it, so it's time for it to go. Next up is Viraconium by M. John Harrison. This is an omnibus edition that includes The Pastoral City, A Storm of Wings, and Viraconium, The Lamia and Lord Chromis, Viraconium Knights, The Luck in the Dead, Strange Great Sins, Lords of Misrule, The Dancer from the Dance, and A Young Man's Journey to Viraconium. I've tried the Pastoral City and did not like it, so I'm thinking I will likely go ahead and get rid of this edition. The Magicians by Lev Grossman. This is the first novel in a trilogy about a group of young wizards who go to a university to learn magic and become useless adults once they graduate. The Magicians is basically the love child of J.K. Rowling, Bret Easton Ellis, Lewis Carroll, or C.S. Lewis. No. Okay. It's the love child of J.K. Rowling and her Harry Potter series, C.S. Lewis and his Narnia series, and either Bret Easton Ellis or Donna Tartt. Basically, The Magicians is Harry Potter if he was a character in Donna Tartt's Secret History, and Narnia happened to come into it. I read it several years ago, and I have mixed feelings for it. The School of Magic aspect of it, particularly as seen through a more Donna Tartt or Bret Easton Ellis style, it's kind of interesting. But once the novel becomes more Narnia, I lost interest. And I have no real interest in really rereading this or actually getting to the other books in the trilogy, which I don't have. The next few books are by William Gibson of Burning Chrome. This is a short story collection that I picked up largely for Burning Chrome, but I have not actually gotten around to reading it. Neuromancer, a foundational text in cyberpunk. It has been a very long time since I reread it. Or since I read it. I don't know if I've actually reread it. I'm a bit more fond of Count Zero, though, the sequel. And I also have The Difference Engine, which is co-written by Bruce Sterling, which is an early foundational text in steampunk. Not interested. Next is Mage's Blood by David Hare. Not entirely sure what this is about. Not entirely sure why I bought it. I don't think I'll ever try it, so it's time to go. Next is Chasm City by Alistair Reynolds. This is the third book in his Revelation Space trilogy or series. It's about a man who was raised on a colony ship who in order for his ship to make it to the planet they were going, I think he jettisoned a good chunk of the sleeper colonists. And this led to him being a very hated man. And he did some other evil stuff. And he flees to a different planet where he's tracked down by several of those he wronged. Not entirely sure I ever really want to reread this. So the next 6 books are by Peter Newman in 2 different trilogies. The first is the Vagrant trilogy with The Vagrant, The Malice, and The Seven. Not that 7. So The Vagrant takes place in a post-apocalyptic world, whether future Earth or the future of a fantasy world, I don't know, in which demons have invaded the world and there's some resistance against them. The Vagrant's about a man who was sort of a magic knight, taking a child out of the demon-infested or ruled lands to places that are not controlled by demons, and things go from there. I didn't much like The Vagrant. Although I did end up picking up the second and third books in the series, and I don't quite know why. So if I have the space in the donation boxes of Doom, I will probably put it in there. And for some odd reason, which is probably something I will really need to address when I get to the science fiction and fantasy part of my reading history video series, which hopefully I will be able to do soon. But I also have another trilogy by him, which features The Deathless, The Ruthless, and The Boundless. Have not gotten to them yet. The last 2 books on these shelves are Winter of Ice and Iron by Rachel Neumeier. A very foily cover. Don't know much about this. I don't know if I ever tried a chapter of this or not, but I don't think I'm ever going to get to it, so it's time to go. And finally, The Many-Colored Land by Julian May. This is the first book in a multi-book series about far future humans who have gained psychic abilities and other superhuman abilities, who grow bored because they live in a science fictional utopia. And so some dummy develops a way to travel into the past. Although this method of traveling into the past is one way. You go to the past, you're not coming back. So a bunch of dingbats travel to, I think, that period between the extinction of the dinosaurs to before the evolution of humans, or maybe very early in the evolution of humans, to sort of live out their lives. Unfortunately for them, at this time, Earth has been conquered by an alien species. And every time a dummy human goes to live out their lives in this whatever it is, they get enslaved. Until eventually somebody manages to break themselves free and start a rebellion. I know this novel has been highly recommended, but I don't think I'm going to get to it. So that concludes the penultimate shelf of Science Fiction and Fantasy Week. I will be back tomorrow morning with the final 2 shelves of my science fiction and fantasy collection. So, anyways, I'll look forward to that, and I will see you later this evening with weekly reads. So, until then, thank you, have a great afternoon, and stay safe.